Good afternoon and welcome back to the keynote again in the afternoon section after the performance. Very extraordinary, very impressive performance. So let's begin with the next session. The project, the Pomposa Project, where art and technologies meet to spark creative in everyone. Like as we see that there are no instrument, no musical instrument at all, but we are very curious about how it's gonna sound, how you can gonna put an object or everything looks fancy to make it sound, make it possible. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Enrico Bertelli and Dr. Yui Shikakura.
Wonderful. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. My combat name is Mr. E, or Mystery. And this is... all right. And we're here visiting from the good old London to show you how we can do lots of music in a very different way. And we believe that through a certain type of education called STEAM education, that's where you put your STEM. It's not a mispronounced version of STEM. It's a real new thing. You have science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which is a great program from the government, in particular the British government, to transform you all in robots, which can be disposed as soon as the coding language that you learn gets obsolete. If you don't believe me, all of those people that studied Flash until a few years ago, now they are unemployed. Flash got deprecated just 6 months ago. We don't like STEM, we like STEAM. There's an extra letter, the A for the arts. And in all of the projects that we do, we try to put a little extra ingredients. We start from a ball that makes noise. We start from these beautiful wearables that we have designed here at PGVIM with help from the Silla Pacorn Department of Decorative Arts. And we use quite a lot of different things, from strange patches to lizards made of tinfoil. Although we could hook up the real lizards as well, but I'm not particularly keen to go near those ones. They're a bit big. And we really like to believe, and at least we try our best, to make sure that education triggers some social change one way or the other. So we brought to you a toolkit. So this presentation wants to be an opportunity to share best practices and to just show you what worked for us, and maybe it inspires you to use this in your practice, not just in education, but perhaps in other things as well. So first of all, there is one key thing that we're really keen on. We don't want to teach content, we want to teach method. So the how is always bigger than the what. And by this, I mean, when we are trying to make new music using a piece of felt and some weird materials, conductive thread, conductive tape, and some LEDs built in, we're not interested in showing you how to do this exact thing. We're interested in guiding you, your students, the next teachers, in transforming this, a template, into this. And we focus on children from challenging backgrounds. That has got a lot of definition. I'm going to cover some of them. But just so you have an idea, we're talking about children roughly 6 to 16 years old. This is at least the main focus. They encounter barriers to learning, which means perhaps they live in remote areas where they don't have a science museum, an art gallery. They don't have the opportunity to come to PGVIM and follow the performances. Or maybe they don't know that this is a good thing. Maybe culturally they're not used to doing this. Their family is not used to taking them. And inevitably, their educational life is kind of a suffered one, because they see the academic side of things quite a challenge, something that is not fun, something that is like very disconnected from their everyday reality. And it's very important for us, that's the last point on this slide, that we don't speak to the children only, but we involve the teachers, the parents, and any other adult or any other professional that is involved in their education, or at least in their day-to-day experimentation. So we do really like STEAM, and there's that little sentence there, which is we strive to work with technologies that enable each individual to leverage their strength. So for example, we just put 4 different things here. We have, I'll go chronologically. So when we work with the tiny, tiny, tiny kids, we work with the ball. So this is just a very simple MIDI that, you catching it? Hello, Yui-chan? That you can use to just play and refine the motor skills. You can make a score by maybe rolling the ball, maybe tapping the ball, maybe recording your own samples, recording the voice, making a composition, making a score. So you can make an entire, that's quite cool, an entire piece of music just by learning how to throw a ball. Then we move on to the Touch Me, and this is really cool. I had a quote from a student who will not be named, otherwise might not achieve his master's degree here. But he said, why on earth do we practice scales every day when we can simply do this? And yes, that's absolutely true. Perfect. I don't know if that's normal to you, but to me, the concept of playing a lizard to play a pentatonic scale is a bit like weird. And it's really cool because in these instruments, what we aim is to basically take the music making away from all of the context. Because especially with the kids that we work with, they might see music as a complicated thing, usually as an expensive thing, and something that they cannot do. But we really want to make sure that they can do it from home for free. So all of the software that I've used just now, and also the ones that you'll see tonight at the performance, is only free software. None of these is professional stuff. Everything is based on a browser. And you can access it, you can make your own accounts, and can be used all the time. We just progressing with the age group a little bit. So this is usually when we work with the years 1 and 2, which is roughly 6, 7 years old. Then when you hit 8, 9, we work with this Makey Makey, which is like a Nintendo controller. And you will see it tonight. We build very simple xylophones made of paper and tin foil. So you can just play a piece of paper, and that becomes your musical instrument. By the way, tonight, when you come, hopefully you come to the performance, please feel free to come on stage, because it's really important that you see what's on the table. We're not so much interested in the sound, we're interested in the method, like before. Not what is played, but how it is played. So feel free to come on stage and touch things. That's absolutely fine. And finally, we work with the microbit, which is very interesting because it wasn't born to be a musical instrument, but it doesn't know it. So we teach it how to become one. It's basically an empty shell inside of which you can create some code and transform it into lots of different things. We like to transform it into musical instruments, but you can actually control robots, make an earthquake machine, make a lightsaber, make anything you can think of. As long as you can think of it, you can probably make it. And it's not that difficult. I'll show you a piece of the code later on. Now, to have a quick word about the type of kids that we work with, I will explain these weird acronyms. About 17%, they have special educational needs. And this is very diverse. Very, very, very diverse. There are, I think, 3 main locations, let's say. So this could be within this mainstream school, where the child has some support, whether it's a teaching assistant, a one-to-one assistant, or maybe a special group within which they can operate. And for that, we tend to bring quite different activities to make sure that everybody is able to make some music by the end of a lesson. The second point is very challenging, which is when the disability is not recognized. And this happens very often. We see a massive difference between the students in London, who are usually very well supported, and simply, I cannot tell you why the children in London are diagnosed and those outside are not, but I do speculate that because London is very expensive, the head teachers want the disabled kids to bring in more money. And thanks to capitalism, that happens in London very well. Outside is different, which is quite a challenge, because even though we as specialists, we see the disability, we cannot really call it, because the child doesn't know it, the parents don't know it, the teachers don't know it. So that, if you happen to teach in that situation, that's a bit of a challenging one. So that's the one that you need to be the most careful about what you say and what you do. And then there is the special school, which is where disabled kids are in a completely new, separate environment. I think this is the best one, because we can work really, really in depth with different students. Now, if you plan on doing workshops like this, or anything else, to be honest, it's very important, and this is something that we learn over the years, that you discuss with each special school, because they are not all the same. Every school is completely different. You can go from students who are generally unresponsive verbally. That means that they might just sit in the corner for the entire lesson, but they will be really active listeners. Or you might have people that are really eager, but they cannot move much. So this is called hypertension, for example. So it's really important that you discuss with the teachers that know them really well. So when we go into a special school, we bring lots of things, and then we try and test which one works best. Once we establish that, then we develop the workshop. One thing that I really want to share is, in mainstream education, let's say that you want to take the class from 0 to 10, from the beginning of the lesson to the end of the lesson. Getting to 9 is great. Some people will get to 10, it's amazing. But when you're in a special school, getting from 0 to 3, it's a massive success. And you don't need to push, because this is what I used to do. I always wanted to push to 10, push, push, push. No, it's pointless. We're not asking these students to become the next soloists or the next engineers that take us to the moon. We are just asking them to have a great time and learn that they can make it independently and for free. A couple of more things here. This is called pupil premium or free school meals. And this is usually because of economic challenges. So this doesn't really have anything to do with this, but it does. So unfortunately, when there is a special educational needs, it's usually very correlated to, unfortunately, poverty levels and stuff like that. I've got more data later on, but it's quite scary. Because when you think of England, you think of it as a quite good country, like economically speaking. I'll bring you some data that tells you the opposite. Depends where you look. Everybody is very good at going to Trafalgar Square. But when you look at it a little bit to the left, that's a different story. EAL, interesting. I think pretty much 90% of us, 95% of us are EAL. That means English as an acquired language, where basically at home you don't speak English, but maybe you are born in an English-speaking country. So there's two different things here. It can completely be irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You are basically mother tongue, but at home you speak something else. Or it could be that it's a challenge. And this is a moment, in which we bring in the technology. Because imagine, just focus here a little bit, imagine not speaking the language at all. Maybe not being even able to read the alphabet. It happens quite often. This is the type of coding language that we use. And first, we just give the instructions block by block Think of this as a puzzle. When you combine it, you can move this little duck and make sound as you play the game, basically. But let's say that you didn't understand what I said. Well, you can look for colors, first of all. So this one says, sorry, it's a bit small, it says on start. Well, it's bright green. This is bright green, so it's going to be there. The next one is whatever this color is, and it's in game. The next one is red, so it's going to be in variables. So you see, you can find it. But maybe you're colorblind. And this is another very good test for us to share with the teachers who might not have done this with the kids. But just to be clear, colorblind is when some colors mix or don't mix. Usually it's the green and the red that they look exactly the same. And there's a lot of people. There's 10% of the students that have got that, but they don't know it. And just knowing it makes life so much easier. Because if I say red and then you go to the green, I think you're not listening, so I get upset. But then if I know that you're colorblind, I said, okay, search for something else. Search for a keyword. But then maybe you cannot spell properly. Not to worry, because these are things called the wild cards. So if you take a word with 5 letters and you destroy 2 of them or even 3 of them, the search engine can find the word that you're looking for. So you can pretty much get to the result anyways, which is really cool. So this is one of the ways that we use new technologies. And by the way, the real language behind this is JavaScript, which of course is a nightmare, so we don't even mention that that exists. And we keep things easy and happy. Last type of context in which we work, and by the way, if you have any particular interest, please do ask, because we can expand on any of these. These are called the pupil referral units. So these are institutions where the students are for a variety of reasons, usually from the mildest one, which are grief or some temporary psychological problems, to the more challenging ones, violence, abuse, drug abuse, anything else. So in here, I think the teachers make a massive difference, like huge, on a day-to-day basis. I would like to share a little story about a policeman who I taught with in one of these schools. So this was a huge guy, really fit, really serious, and I'm in the school and says, "You're not a teacher." Yes, well, no, you were not a teacher because you don't look like one. And then he starts telling me this story. This is in the suburbs of Manchester, so quite rough, very rough area. And he's saying, look, I keep arresting the same kids over and over and over and over, 17, 18, 19. And you know, they go to prison, after a week they come out, same thing happens once again. At some point, one of these that got arrested for possession of AAA class drugs, the bad ones, he thanked him. And the policeman just like, well, you're going to prison for a long time. But the kid says, yes, but I got a roof, I've got food, and I can take a degree in economics, so when I go out, I can make even more money with the drugs. And at that stage, this policeman said, all right, I'm doing it wrong, it's too late for these kids. So he rewound time. Instead of arresting the 18-year-old, he went down to working in a special school, in a pupil referral unit in Cheshire, where he can actually work with much younger kids. And this is something that I think of every day. So when you go there, in this context, every day you can make a massive difference for these kids. Especially because these children might come in only 1 day a month. They might not be in school all day. Or they might just be for 20 minutes. It's very, very different. And just to give you the 2 extremes, we go from a situation in which we thought there was you know, CSI, the crime scene investigation. So they created it, and I thought it was amazing. Half of the school had to commit the crime, and half of the school had to find out who did it. Obviously, it's a fake one, but you know, you go in, you've got all the police tape, and you've got the wanted signs with the faces of the teachers and everything. And that, you know, really creates a bridge between what they see on TV and what they do in school, and it's really enticing. At the other side, I will not name the location, but I can tell you in secret, the sport of this particular school was to steal apples from the canteen and throw them as hard as possible to the windows. And this is the same type of school. It's a pupil referral unit in one area or the other. So you can see how teachers can make a massive, I mean, they always do, but in this particular thing, it's huge, a difference. Just so you have an idea of the students we work with very tiny kids who create, like for example here, the paper piano. I don't know if you know, but pencils conduct electricity. So if you make a little drawing, then you can connect it and play the piano with that. This is similar sort of thing with the rulers and some tinfoil, so you can play the piano just by touching the ruler. This is the microbit that I showed you before. We create a light theremin. So we take the light that comes from the windows, depending on how bright or dark it is, we change the sound. And this one you'll also hear tonight in one of the performances. And this instead is the work we've done with the special schools. I think this is, yeah, again, a makey-makey, where you can connect each person to a different note, maybe a different instrument, maybe a different sample as well. So you can see how it can exist in very different contexts. And here we go. So when we work with the children from challenging backgrounds, they obviously face many challenges. So first thing, low resilience. That means as soon as there is an obstacle, it's gone. And I mean, you're all musicians, so you know we face obstacles all the time in a new piece, in a new instrument, in a new technique. And if you give up immediately, that's it, you're done. I'm not criticizing too much the students, but rather the teachers. So when we go into a school, by the way, we change school every 2 days, so we've seen quite a lot. We find that as soon as the children find a problem, they give up, and the teachers immediately go. And I think that's the worst possible thing. Because if I give up and somebody else helps me, I might as well give up all the time. But if I give up and that doesn't happen, then maybe I think, oh, I need to fix it. And I mean, my philosophy is, if I don't see blood, and if it's not on fire, you don't need me. Okay? You can fix it. You can click it. It's called the digital generation for something. Now, what do they call it? They call it something else. The digital natives, sorry. Yeah? Which is the biggest lie of them all. Let me share this. We are a high-tech company. Everybody thinks that children are good with technology. Children are rubbish with technology. They don't know anything. Seriously. I mean, some of you are roughly my age or something like that. When you started with a 486, with the Pentium 200, to make one game run, we could barely read, and we had to set up booting disks. I don't know if you've ever done this type of thing. Now you just download the thing from the Play Store, and it works. And this is the one that we call the pot noodle culture. Nothing wrong with the pot noodles, but with the pot noodle culture. You go to 7-Eleven, open it up, get the hot water, close it, 2 minutes, off you go. Everything is inside. You can do it for 200 years. You don't know how noodles are made. So if they run out, you don't know how to make them. But if you start learning, okay, this is how I make the dough, this is how I make the sauce, this is how I make the broth, then maybe you can open a ramen shop. Yeah? We're not all becoming mutter. We can do other things. But this is the inspiration, and this is what we really don't want. And that's why when you are really tiny and you work with us, you get a machine that pretty much plays. Oh, now you can speak. Sorry, you got offended. There you go. You touch, it works. Then you can start exploring something else, like other people. Perfect. Thank you very much. And then when you get a little bit older, we give you more options. Not more instructions, we just give you more options. Like you can connect this cable, the other cable, that will make a different sound, that will make more sounds. And then we start entering a world where there are no cables, there are no sounds, there is nothing until you make it, which is the world of coding. I'm going to give you a quick example of that as well, because I feel it's very interesting when we start creating the musical world in which we operate. When you play a piano, you press one note, it works. You expect the next one to work. In coding, no. If you've coded the first note, you need to code the next one. Otherwise, it just doesn't exist. And this is not obvious. This is not obvious. And this comes from a quite amateur coder. I'm not a professional by all means. But more on that in a minute. The other problem that we see the kids facing is the absence of role models. So in London, we have these things called boroughs, which is basically areas of London. If you have never been, you probably know 3 or 4. You know Kensington, you know Chelsea, you know the football teams, and that's it. Then you know Camden because you have the punks, or you used to have the punks. But Camden is very interesting because you have a Bentley parked here, and you have people sleeping on the floor there. So it's really, really steep differences. In 3 of the boroughs that we work with, they're called Hackney, Tower Hamlets, and I forget the third one, and Newham. There we go, thank you very much. 2 in 5 people are living below poverty line. And this is not just one in a family. This tends to be the whole family in a chronic way. So you are in poverty, your parents are in poverty, your grandparents are in poverty. And this is where we try to work the most. Try to give the tools for a change. And we try to give tools to the kids. We try to give tools to the teachers so they can follow up with the kids. And also, when we can, to the parents. That was really interesting during the lockdown because we got to interact with the parents much more. And on some occasion, that became really, really interesting. So for example, now, 2 years later, we have parents calling us up if we can host their children, young adults now, to do some, apprenticeships with us digitally, which is very interesting. This, just in case you're wondering, they are called Leveling Up for Culture places, and they are basically a list of cities, towns, in which the government is investing more money in terms of culture, in terms of infrastructure and education and so forth. So this is the second problem. Third problem, unfortunately, they are excluded at school. So if these kids are within mainstream education, the teacher has themselves maybe a teaching assistant and 30 screaming monkeys that need help. Now, the monkey that screams the most is not going to be helped the most because they're all together. So sometimes the teacher only has one option, so to exclude the person. And unfortunately, this gets worse and worse all the time because they never see a project from beginning to end. They will see it, they will start, but then they get kicked out. And we see this all the time. So we do try never to do that. Sometimes we have to resort to this, but we try to always make sure that there is maybe a shortcut to get to the result quickly so that we give them a little inspiration to maybe try it in a different way. Sometimes it works. Sometimes just by changing the type of music is really cool. If you give piano sound to a 16-year-old in a PRU, it will take the stuff and throw it at you. But if you use a sampler that has got that disgusting drill music on, oh, they're hooked for life. It happened to me in person as well. And I'll show you a picture of the teacher. It's in this presentation. The other thing that we probably found as well, is that during the lockdown, some of the students didn't follow any of the lessons at all. The guilt is spread between the teachers, the school, but also the students and the parents. There was this big thing about the digital divide, which possible, fair enough, but I'll give you an example to prove the opposite. In Tower Hamlets, which is one of the poorest boroughs in London, we had one school joining our courses with 314 students out of 320. So that means pretty much 95% of the people were there, online. And this is the poorest borough, okay? In another area, Rotherham, up north in Yorkshire, we had one student in one school. One. So I don't really believe it's the absence of devices, it's also the absence of will. And that's obviously is our job of the teachers to make sure that they are on it and they want to follow. And last thing, which is not really minor, is that they are generally not entrusted in taking responsibility within a project, within a school project, or within a group even. So what do we try to do? We try to bring in the STEAM, so as I mentioned earlier, science, tech, engineering, arts, and maths, and make sure that this is used effectively. So here's our recipe. So first of all, we like the technology because you can do bite-sized steps. And this is a bit of a geek misspelling, because you can spell it with a Y as in byte for computers, or with the I as in byte. But technology is also borderless. Many students that we work with are disenfranchised by acoustic instruments. Western acoustic instruments have got a very specific white, upper middle class or upper class connotation. And they are not listening to a piano on YouTube. They're not listening to a violin on, maybe they listen to it on the lift. That's as close as they get to classical music at IKEA or wherever they're going. So we want to use something that is borderless, where you decide the sound, you decide how it looks like, you decide how it's used. Luckily, there are quite clear future pathways if you learn this type of technology in pretty much any field within the creative and cultural industries. So this is one of the new things called T-levels in England, which mix academic learning and apprenticeship. So they are the new degrees which actually bring in workplace experiences, I guess, within your degree. So the really important ingredient for us is that it needs to be customizable. And as a very simple thing, this is what we started from, this is what we ended up with. So you need to be able to change it as much as possible. You need to be able to use open-ended environments, which means we come to you and we show you the musical applications, but maybe you can control robots tomorrow using the exact same thing. And last ingredient is being able to do it manually. We've seen this especially during the online lessons. The feedback was marginally lower for our workshops when it's online only, because seeing something on the screen is good, making it happen like the musical video game is great, but then being able to download it and make sound with it is a completely different world. Obviously, we want to learn through play, because we want to learn without knowing that we're learning. And this is really common for early year practice, like the ball. But when we go into what we call key stage 2, so from 8 years old, or 7, depending, the academic stuff, the theoretical stuff, becomes massive, and the practical goes to 0. Obviously, as musicians, you have experienced a little bit of a rebalancing. But generally speaking, most people go from zoom. And a couple of very nice ingredients here is the gamification aspect. So when we come and deliver a session, that is to create a musical instrument that controls a video game. So because that is a cool thing that you see your friend do, you end up doing it. And the gamification aspect is addictive. I don't know if you play games or if you use any sort of apps, but I'm sure at some point you have done an action or you have repeated an action just because it was fun rather than because you wanted to do it. Personally, the thing that works for me really well is Duolingo, which is a language thing. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't study every day. But because it's there, even if it's 5 minutes, it's a 5 minutes every day, which is really cool. And that's the point of learning without realizing it. Before going any further, I wanted to share with you just how quick and easy it is to make one of these codes, just to give you a quick experience. So we have, just a moment, sorry. Mirror. Okay. Easy on, brilliant. In this platform, you have an emulator, which is a digital version of this bad boy here. You have the menu, and this is where the code lives. Everything exists as a block. Think of it as a digital form of Lego. And even though at the beginning it might be a bit scary, sorry, there we go, you can probably figure out how it works in just a handful of seconds. So I'm going to create a little, a couple of notes that when I touch them, will play the piano. Now, within most of the music software, you've got, there we go. These are obviously not musical notes, but they are the piano keyboard superimposed on the computer keyboard, so I can play, okay? And now I'm just gonna create it here. So just to show you how easy it is, you don't have to be scared about it, we can get a button. And now here we stitched A6, A5, A3. So I'm gonna get A6, and I'm gonna say, when you press down on A6, I wanna hear maybe the note C. The note C is the letter Z in that software. And then when I depress, so when I take my finger off, the note stops. Let's see if it's true. That's another great thing about these devices. The theoretical moment is very short. You try it, and you need to find an immediate change. Apologies, here we go. Okay. Okay, I'm not happy with this. I want to have a chord, not to worry. So I can do the next one, which I believe is A5. And let me check, a C major recipe is a Z, C, and a B. So I've got my Z, I've got my C, I've got my B, and I can stop that chord as soon as I take my finger off. I'm going to download the code again. There we go. So on this code, just imagine a finger going down, a finger coming up. It's exactly the same thing. And let's see. Just downloading the code. I now have a note and a chord. Obviously, this leads to melodies, arpeggios, and anything else you can think of musically. Oh, beautiful. Because we want to be able to create musical instrument with absolutely anything. So this is, this is one of the latest one. Let me share, this is really cool. We, for example, built hardware microphones. There is a little chip there that we asked the kids to assemble. These things are just, you know, the arcade buttons from the big video game machines from the 90s. We use them as start and stop buttons. And then each kid was able to create a little mic with a transistor mic and then go around and record samples. So in this particular project that we did just before breaking for summer, we recorded samples from the forest, from woods. We taught them how to chop the samples, so we did sample editing, and we reorganized them into a composition, which was, you know, quite interesting. A couple of words on how we select the platforms that we use. because obviously not all of them are useful. So if you're planning on working in new technologies, this is our suggestion. So first of all, hardware, so it's the physical stuff, this. We capped it at £70. That's about 2,000 baht, just underneath. If it costs more, people can't afford it. This is a very affordable price, at least in London. A kid will probably be able to save this in 3 months or 4 months, or maybe ask something like this for a birthday or something like that. Children from challenging backgrounds always have an iPhone newer than mine, so they can definitely afford it if they want it. They need to be non-proprietary. Schools get scammed all the time by these fancy devices that only work with one app. The company goes bust, you have a lot of trash in your hands. Because if the company goes bust, the first time the iOS gets updated, the new operating system for Windows jumps in, that is not updated, so all of your hardware, bye-bye. This can be coded through Python. It's an open source language. So even if Microsoft blows up, you can still do it with Python. All of the other things, they're basically emulating either a MIDI controller or a computer keyboard. So it's always available, regardless to the company. Software-wise, we're a big advocate of what's called FOSS, which is free and open source software. And there's two things that might sound the same, but they're not. So one is open access, which is free to use, where you usually give up your soul, but you can do the music. So be careful, use browsers that don't give away all of your things, like use Brave, use Opera, don't use that Internet Explorer stuff, which we still see in schools. The other three things is we want them to be cross-platform, because of course, one school will have iPad, the other will have iMac, the other will have Windows. So they need to be websites, because you don't want to install stuff. We really like when they're cloud-based, so all of the codes that we've done, they stay in the browser of whoever is doing the workshop. And ideally, they can be used anonymously because of online safety. We do create lots of tutorials, but if there are other things there, it's really nice, especially because you can show different type of uses. So not only musical instruments, but other things. Very simple examples here. We've got Play-Doh. So you can make a piano out of Play-Doh, which is something that pretty much any primary school will have. You've already seen these ones, and in this particular one, actually, this is really cool. We make music by tilting the device back and forth. So if it's straight up, it plays Do. If it's flat, it plays Re. And if it's down, it plays Mi. So we can talk about maths, geometry, coding, and music all in one thing. I'm sure you've seen some of these also through other sessions today and yesterday, but we really like using Chrome Music Lab. It's really good, really free, really reliable as well. This one I showed you a second ago, the coding platform. And in case you're wondering where this whole world came from, is Scratch. I suggest not to use Scratch. It's too old, it's too complicated. There are better things that are much easier to use. But, again, it's also a matter of choice. We bring it all together by working with the kids in 4 different areas, in person or remotely. We have different approaches to this, but just to give you a few numbers here, this year, so this was from January to July, we had 620 workshops in 152 schools, covering 15,525 students, with very good results. We offered videos, lesson plans, because it's really important that you talk the teacher language. So if you're creating a project, don't just go in and do it. Create a piece of paper that, in the language that teachers understand, explains what you are trying to do. Otherwise, as soon as you're out of the door, the project disappears. But if you want them to be able to continue, give them a translation, especially if you're using musical instruments, which are very alien to most people. These, as I mentioned earlier, are the opportunities that we give to the teachers to join us. So just a couple of pictures to have an idea. This, by the way, is the session that we did in the very hardcore school. So it does exist. It is still possible to make video games with children that, well, students that are pretty much about to go to jail if they do anything else wrong. Now, we did quite a lot of workshops here. We spent a month. And obviously, I wanted to extend a massive thank you to Anotai and JD, who wrote the grant together with us. We're sponsored by the British Council to come here. And we spent the last 3 weeks in creating instruments. We worked with Silapakorn students, lecturers, members of the public, Chulalongkorn students and lecturers, teachers, young people, disabled kids, and in all of these we tried to create musical instruments with a few things in mind. First, they had to be wearable. Then they had to be usable by other people. So what if I'm creating an instrument for blind kids, for example? Will they be able to find the notes? And this is why we tried to put extra touching things so that you can find it. I mean, imagine a piano without the black keys. You're never going to find it. But as soon as you got it, you can kind of play. Even if you're not a pianist, you know roughly where you are. We spent, especially with the first workshop,
How about you push the button?
Brilliant. We created a prototype, and in this particular one, we were testing the microphone. So I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not playing it again. The song was generating different lights with a beat. So, you know, we created a little code that says, check the microphone. Whenever it goes over the gate, change the color. So we created this type of thing. So it's very important to talk to these, well, these designers, by the way, they're not musicians and they're not coders. It was the first time that they created something like this. But it was really interesting to discuss this with them. How do these things work? What type of music can we make with it? And we wanted them to create a unique idea. Tonight you'll see that all the instruments are completely different. We designed them 2D, 3D, troubleshooting, crying, swearing, all of those things that you do when you make stuff. And this one of the results.
Wow.
So this was a flower that generated random chords every time you touched one of these patches, and also did light up a little bit. One very important thing, if you plan a making activity, and if you think that you can do it in 5 minutes, the general public will do it in 50 minutes, if they do it. What we tend to forget all the time is that we do this every day. So if you come to me with an idea that says, I want to do some chord with an arpeggiation and blah, 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 milliseconds, blah, blah, blah. Say, okay, fine, 30 seconds, we do it. And if you try to teach that with somebody who has never seen this before, take your time. If you think you can do it in half an hour, take half a day. And it's very important that you give time, let it happen, let people figure out things. And this was one of my first and biggest mistakes when I was starting to teach. Always like, push, push, push. Don't. Because you're never going to learn. You're just going to be stressed out. There are going to be short circuits, but troubleshooting builds a lot of resilience. If you've stitched, because we did stitch everything by hand, 1 meter, and it doesn't work, well, you need to take it off and do it again. Because it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you got, or how much you cry, it's not going to work. So it's really good to build resilience in people. Let's bring it all together. We want to push people to exit their comfort zone. And that's why we teach coding to people that have never coded before. We want them to work together, so develop not only hard skills, but also communication skills, team working skills, and so forth. Especially in children, these don't exist. And then we want to empower the creativity. What is it that you want to do? I'm just going to guide you to say how you make it, but the what is down to you. You choose what happens. One thing which is very important, when we make new technologies, we always make them for ourselves. Do you want to know an example? Have you ever tried to teach anything digital to your parents? Have you ever tried to teach it over the phone? Because, yeah, I'm not going to say it, but yeah, I have a 3-minute fuse, after which, I don't know if you had the same experience, click on the button, it's not there. We're looking at the same app, it's not there. And that's the reason. We are making apps for ourselves, but we're not really thinking about other people. If you can do this, and if you can do this successfully, you become an UI UX designer, and you've got the biggest paid job of probably all of the people in this room put together. So that's a very good career advice that I would like to share. Last thing, which is very interesting for the musicians, is use the limitations as a catalyst. This machine has 6 notes maximum. But that shouldn't be something that hinders your creativity. It should say something, oh, can I actually leverage code or harmony or other things to make it interesting? And don't be afraid to fail. This is another thing that schools really hate, but we really like, because failing is an opportunity for learning and creating other things. You will see some of the wearables tonight, if you want to join us from 6 o'clock. And I would like to thank all of the people that were involved. This is the crew from PGVIM and Silapacorn, and do we have anyone else as well? Maybe. Oh yes. Also, a massive thank you to I Love No Name, the fashion designer Net, who has been guiding us throughout these days. Final thing, the journey. We want to transform pot noodle eaters to Tang Men shop owners. We want to make sure that these are the 3 steps. Everything is cross-disciplinary, so that if you're not interested in this part, you can use the other one. If you're not interested in coding, you can do the design. If you're not interested in the design, you can focus on the music. And this is obviously to foster different types of interest and to open up different career pathways. This means creative and cultural industries. You want to add a tangible ingredient that makes a, you want to add a tangible ingredient that makes a, really makes a difference. And you want to make sure that there is a bridge between everyday life. For example, the style of music that your students are listening to. For example, the type of game that they might play to. Or perhaps the video library that you use connected to the music videos that they watch on a daily basis. Because all of these things create and boost the resilience. So, thank you very much indeed for listening and for your patience. I hope this was useful. And I've got any questions you've got, we're here. But if not, don't forget, 6 o'clock tonight. Don't miss it. Thank you very much, everybody.
And any questions from? Yes.
Hi, I have a very simple question. How did you get involved in all of this right at the beginning?
Oh, nice. At random, as always. By the way, hello, I don't know if you remember me. We met 20 years ago in Durham. I came for a PhD interview. Hello. Yes. We'll talk about it later. No worries, no worries. Yeah. Yes, so that actually happened while ordering pizza at Queen's University in Belfast. We were invited to do a similar project to teach complicated science concepts to young children. And at that stage, a grant became available. So I just asked one of the other PhDs that was there if she wanted to do a collaboration. We did. And we started 9 years ago, very small, just 5 schools. 5 became 10, 20, 100, 150. And we're here today about to start the 10th year. And fingers crossed, that will work. So for the first time, we are now included in what's called the National Plan for Music Education, which is like a part of the national curriculum for England. And all of these things, they are linked as best practice for music technology in education. So, thank you.
Hi, thanks. That was really interesting, quite enlightening, actually. Maybe I misread one of your slides, but the students who were being referred to, special referral students, the 1%, I think it read, or maybe it's just my eyesight, may go to jail, but better behaved, that it said possibly better behaved. Did I read that correctly?
Let me see.
Maybe I'm just standing too far back here, that's the... Pupil referral. Generally better behaved, yet could end up in jail. Would you like to explain that potential paradox?
Yeah. Sorry. So this one refers to, for example, the school in which there was that crime scene investigation unit. If these kids are within mainstream education, they can get away with anything. I can get to you and swear at you, take a chair and throw it. Nobody will dare do anything. I can still do it. I can come back to school. If you do that, in a pupil referral unit, you're no longer there because the staff is trained to restrain, to subdue, to do whatever they need to do. Police is called in on a number of occasions as well. So these are, yes, you should have spaced them out probably. They refer to 2 different contexts. But what we do see is that when we go into either a special school or a pupil referral unit, we tend to find much better behavior than in a special school when the things work. When they do not work out, obviously, we're not talking about throwing the pencil onto the floor. They are, in a much worse situations, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry.
Do you have plan to work on like a teacher training for maybe a younger teacher that interesting in teach electronic music, where they can find the training or like teacher training program? Do you have any plan on that?
So we do have a platform that we use for this. And then rather than a teacher training, Steamco, there we go. Rather than a teacher training is learn it yourself sort of thing. So when it comes, this is our collection of videos, lesson plan, slides, and printable homework sets that the children can use. Sorry, just give it a minute. But we do deliver regular, we call them CPD, Continuous Professional Development Sessions, which we use in 2 ways. One, to open up some possibilities to the teachers who are very eager to use this technology, but they just don't know it exists. There is also the problem that normally teachers tend to know that their technology doesn't work in school, so they're very reluctant to try. They just like write it off. Okay, no, it's not happening. But when we go into the school, we always try to use what's available. Even if it's really bad, we want to say, okay, we'll try it. We'll make it work. You can do it. And we also use it at the same time to basically show what it is. Because regardless, to how we write about it, this is so different from everyday school that people just don't understand what it is. But when they see it, I mean, when you see this, then it makes sense, kind of. but at least it's touch that becomes music. If I send to you a proposal that says, oh, we're going to take tinfoil, make it into a structure and make music with it, they think either it's a joke, it's a scam, or that you're crazy, right? But by showing it, even just 5 minutes, and they see that what it is, then they go, ah, okay. When it comes to specific training, there's not enough people. But if we get the demand, obviously we develop everything. Capitalism. What you gonna do?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Enrico.
Thank you. See you at 6 o'clock.
Just few more questions from me.
Oh, of course.
Yes. I think from your innovation from this has some see more possibilities or has some the way to develop it and so long to see many potential about it. I just was thinking when I was a childhood, we used to experience the music, experience the scale, experience the chord from the real instrument, from the acoustic thing. But with this innovation, with this technology, you can experience the music, experiencing from completely different method, like touching, scribing, scratching, anything else. In that way, how do you think that in the future, that how it affects or how it has a influence to the future generation, that or are there something be missing or some extra element that occur in about the aesthetic of music or something like this?
So I think if you use it as a hobby, as an amateur, it will make it much easier for everybody to try. At least everybody gets the opportunity, because this is cheap, it's easy, and you can do it at home. Technology, hopefully, will open up other ways of making music in a different thing. Music education is obviously 200 or 300 years behind, so it needs to jump ahead. I mean, yeah, you say study scales and everything. I hear dinosaurs. We need to go ahead. It doesn't matter. Nobody uses it. It's pointless. We are on the verge of creating AI that makes the music. So I think let's jump. But then people, when they see this, they can choose. Do you want to do Baroque? Do you want to do classical? Do you want to do ethnomusicology? Do you want to do musicology? So at least everybody gets a chance. I think this is step one. Then if you want to do technology 100%, then these are not good. These are toys to start. Then you go into that, right? It's like when you get a little keyboard, and then you move on to a better keyboard, and then you move on to a piano, and then you move on to a concert hall. So it's the same thing here. I believe that these machines are really good to introduce more people to music. Because imagine if you go to school, and you say 2 + 2, you expect everybody to say, in which system? It's a joke. But we like to destroy maths in school a lot, because 2 + 2 is 5, it's not 4. Because if 2 + 2 is 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, when you put them together, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You didn't understand it, right? It's because on computer science, we start counting from 0, not from 1. That's when they say 2 + 2 is what system. But this makes mathematicians have fun with making music. Because they think, oh, cool, I can bash some keys and Super Collider makes some funny stuff on the wall. But before, people couldn't. So either you study the music or you don't do the music. So it's very normal to go to a school and a teacher doesn't even know where the do is on the piano. But you would not accept your child teacher not to know what the square root of 4 is. Does it make sense? So I hope that this will bring music into a more mainstream thing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Enrico. Maybe any other questions? Okay. So we would like to thank you, the keynote speaking from you, and to present to explore, to inspiring us about how we see the music, how we see the current situation of music making and the potential for the future, that how can we develop and can we convey or engage people about music with your technologies, with your project, with your innovation. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the performance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.